Okay, so we good to go on to this topic?
All right.
Okay,
More
so
rare talk. Go.
more rare talk. Yeah, I know. So, this topic came up, and it reminded me of a topic we covered like way back in our first year of making videos, and it's a forum post regarding what to do if you improve an item to rare for a customer who's paying you to improve that item. Did you guys see this post on the forum post or on the forums? Right, like somebody says, "Hey, I have a 50 quality item, and can you please imp it to 80 for me? I'll pay you." And you set out a price. Creep your finger gun. So here we go. And you say you agree. Okay, I'll do this for a certain price, and you start imping, and all of a sudden it turns rare. And now the question is, like, what's the protocol here? Like, what how do we move forward from that position? Now,
There is an old man cam, although we got rid of. I think that was Adam's
yeah,
mystery camera or something at one point.
I know it's
like
such a good
there
time
is
for this
one.
now. The old man Brian? I don't think you made an old man Brian.
No, I didn't. But there's this really old one that's really good. I don't know where it is, to be honest. Anyway, so
Hey, Tucker.
the scenario is this. You are paid to improve an item. And you improve the item, but the item gets turned rare. So it's like you're improving it from, let's say, 40 quality to 80 quality. They pay for that, whatever it is, 10, 20 copper.
Mm-hmm.
You turn it rare. Now what?
Right. So, and a lot of you are putting in this, the common sense approach, right? The common sense, which would be that as long as there was no agreement prior about what happens if it becomes rare, that it should just go back to the customer who's paying with a congratulations, you got a rare, right? And that would be the end of that. But the reason why this is such a contentious issue is because while that makes sense from the perspective of the buyer, what we're neglecting in that is the effect that this has on the improver, right? Like the feeling that, like, I don't know if you are thinking about, like, because everybody's going to think about this from a perspective, right? So I want you to question yourself, like, when you feel like that's the right move, are you imagining yourself from the buyer's perspective, where you are hiring somebody to improve your item and then they improved it rare? Therefore, I expect them to give me back my rare item. And I would say that that's a perfectly reasonable expectation, that it shouldn't be, that rare item's still mine and it's the property of me, and I should just get it back with no extra cost whatsoever. Like, is that the perspective you're looking at it from? Because there is one other perspective to look at it from, and that is that of the imper. And I don't know, maybe have you ever been in that situation? Have you ever been hired to improve somebody's item, and in that process of improving it, it's turned rare? Have you ever had that happen? And if you haven't, I want you to think through that process of like what it would feel like if that happened, because I'm going to tell you from firsthand, it feels like crap when that happens. It's terribly, terribly horrible when that happens. And I know that, like, and
This is
the
from
reason
a
why we talk
perspective of someone who's playing this game for the economy. They love the economy. They love, this is their play style. This is the way Adam used to play and loves playing like this. Anyway, keep it.
Yeah.
I'll do
Okay,
a T.
so
We're doing T's all the way across, right?
And Zulatek, you're bringing up something that definitely is the problem here, right? Because, like, and Takrin is saying, or who was it? Sorry, it was maybe Drogos, right? Drogos was saying you feel like it should always be declared before imping, right? But here's the problem if you're thinking about this from the seller's perspective or the improver's perspective, if the improver said right out at the beginning, like, if this turns rare, then it's going to cost you, or some
I'm going to replace it with a different item that's equal, or
I'm going to replace it with a different item. Yeah, exactly.
That's the agreed upon, whatever.
The moment a condition like this is put on, the seller right away is going to, alarm bells will go off, and potentially the buyer is not going to want to go into that kind of agreement, right? Like,
there's no benefit.
I was actually I was recently thinking about hiring somebody to improve my rope tool recently, and I think I'm going to, right? But then this whole issue comes up, right? Like, what if that person imps it to rare and we hadn't discussed it beforehand, and then we get into this debate about what to do about it afterwards, right? So as the buyer, I was actually contemplating laying out what my expectations are if it turns rare. Like, if it turns rare, I'll give you an extra 2 silver, let's say. That sort of thing. But if the buyer were to do that to me, like if the buyer were to say, I'm going to imp it for you, it'll cost you whatever, 1 silver to imp it to this quality. But if it goes rare, I'm going to replace your tool with another equivalent one, or I'm going to charge you X amount more. Chances are, as the buyer, I'd probably say, maybe I'll go find somebody else. Yeah. So yeah, you get into this like weird situation. Now, when I experienced this the first time, like I improved something for somebody.
So this is one of those back in my days type of scenarios.
In my day type scenarios. Like my initial feeling was a horrible one. Like, man, I just made a rare, but it's not mine. Which means that if instead of improving this item for this guy, instead I was improving my own tool during that moment, I would have gotten a rare for myself. But because I was improving for this other guy, now that rare is that other person's. That just felt like I just lost out. And I ended up just giving the rare back to the guy, like for the,
just while Adam's talking, everybody has some really good points there in the chat.
Okay,
go ahead. Because we'll get there.
But Takrin was saying like it becomes more of an integrity issue, and of course, like that's what you feel as the seller. Like you feel like I need to hold up my integrity. I need to like show that I'm a good seller, and maybe if I give this back to this guy, that person might come back to me again, because of the integrity bit. And totally, all this is going through your mind, and you're like, okay, fine, I'll give the rare back to this guy. I hear a lot of people talking about how in this scenario, the buyer will give a tip. Just for the record, I did not get a tip. I gave it back. The guy was very grateful. They went on their own way. I got my 50 copper and a sour taste in my mouth. So sour was it that I decided, I'm just not going to take any more of those type of orders anymore, because I'd rather be imping things for myself and maybe imping things to create a stock of items. And this way, if a rare chance were to happen randomly, that I would be the one who got to keep the rare. And if somebody wants to order an item from me, I'll have a stock of items ready for them. And that if anybody wants me to improve their item, I'm just going to refuse that order. And that's sort of where I landed on that situation.
So let me just answer the two things. Milkman, you're 100% right. Like, that's basically the way Adam went. You would have a stockpile, and then you might just rotate the items or whatever. If you don't agree to imp an item, you agree to maybe exchange it or something. Right. The problem with that is that how about if you already have an item that has, let's say, 105 WOA on it, and the guy just wants it imped because of the high cast? Right. Do you have another 101 WOA of that item available, sort of thing, right? Like, is that in your inventory?
Right.
And if it's not, then it's like, okay, how long will it take me to create one if I even have that ability? And it's like that sort of scenario. And then
and furthermore, that 100.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just before I get there, on top of that, if that 105 COC item also has my signature on it, right? Signatures definitely play a role in this, because like I wanted to make my rare pickaxe with my signature, and that meant something to me. And that if I give a pickaxe to somebody to improve and it becomes rare, I would want the one that I made back with my signature on it rather than a replacement of that item.
Right. And Grombosh, you're saying there's no debating. Yeah, that's also true in saying that that it just makes sense to, I gave you this item, I expect this item back. The problem is, though, with that, is that you're kind of in a lose-lose scenario here. Somebody's going to lose. Someone's going to get a sour taste in their mouth, either side, in this scenario that is inevitably going to happen if you're going to continue to want your items imped, or if you're a guy that's willing to imp other people's items.
Right.
So people have come up with scenarios, but what ends up happening is either you're like Adam and you decide, okay, I'm no longer going to be in this game. It's not worth it for me as a seller to do this. I'm losing money over a long period of time, and therefore it makes more sense then for me to sell items, to create a stockpile and sell brand new items, than is to imp somebody else's items. It's just not worth it for me. Although he did admit that if the item's already rare or supreme, the chances of him imping it again to a higher rarity is so minuscule that he takes that chance.
And there were orders where, if somebody had an already supreme item and they wanted that imped, I would take that order simply because I knew I was not going to improve that to fantastic.
Right.
But, yeah.
So we're in this scenario where people like your Taiki venture.
But if I did, right. But if I did.
Where you're saying we have vendors that have disclaimers on there of whatever the disclaimer is, whatever, like every seller could have their own little thing. Like, if I turn it rare, this will happen. Some sort of thing. And then that just, it's a little bit like if you're willing to take that on as a buyer, you might as well just maybe go with somebody else that doesn't have that disclaimer, or find somebody else. Basically, there's no good way of handling this scenario.
Right.
It removes it. It actually has, and it has, without us knowing, had an impact to our Wurm economy indirectly, without people realizing it, just because of this whole lose-lose scenario issue. And it's had an impact specifically with Adam and potentially other people selling items.
See, Tuxie, and it's a little bit like that, but it's more like this. Let's say I'm a lottery vendor, but it's also my job. It's my job. I get to take one lottery ticket every hour and open it up and see if I win, right? It would be like that situation where I sell lottery tickets, but every hour I get to pick a lottery ticket and scratch it and see if I win. And let's say I lose that one, losing that one. But the condition is anytime a customer comes in, they can choose to purchase my hourly chance. Okay, so they come in, they say, can I buy a lottery ticket? And I say, sure, you can buy a lottery ticket, but I lose my hourly chance. I'm giving it to them. And let's say they win the lottery because of that. Okay, so now I'm not saying that in this situation, the vendor has a right to the lottery ticket that they sold. But what I'm saying is that the effect that it will have on the vendor is that they're going to feel like they just lost out.
They lose their chance because they were taking care of somebody else's chance, or they sold the right to their chance to somebody else, and that person won.
No, I'm not. It's not that you're opening a lot. Okay, because again, this is obviously not the perfect analogy. Like, we're in a game where I can improve an item for myself, and therefore have the chance every hour to get a rare roll to improve it to rare. And let's suppose that's all I did. I did not take any customers. I'm doing that. I get to keep all my chances. But the moment that I get a customer, then I'm literally giving them my chance. Right? So I'm not saying it's wrong, or that the vendor has. I still agree that it's wrong for the vendor to make a condition that they get to keep the rare. I honestly don't think that that's the right position. But what I want to point out and make everybody aware of is that when it happens to a seller like this, it feels terrible.
Yeah.
Or at least for me, it feels terrible. Now, Drogo's...
Yeah, there's no win-win scenario here. At some point when this happens, somebody loses. And it's just sort of the way that this works. Like it's no ifs, ands, or buts about this.
Right.
Somebody wins, somebody loses. It's the way that this system's in place.
Drogo's points out something important here, right? He says, personally, if I imped an item for somebody for free on an imp along, let's say, for example, that he'd be excited that he made their item rare. And I would totally as well. Like, so in the situation where you're imping for friends or you're imping for fun, for people that, and you're not expecting money, like you're not playing the economy game. Okay. I totally agree that there's no issue in that situation, that a person who's willing to imp for a friend or imp for other people for free would obviously be delighted that they turned their item rare, because they want to help that person. That's the whole point. Okay? But in the event where you're playing the economy game, you're opening up a business and you put a forum post that you have this business and the intention of the business is to make money.
Yeah, that, as Adam has stated, you're playing for the economy. That's why you enjoy this game. That right. And now the question is, legitimate way of playing, and Adam is one of those people that like that type of playing style. Other people have that same playing style. So now it becomes a situation where it's a little bigger. And it's not saying that there's a right or wrong here, but it's saying that when it does happen, some sort of negative effect happens in the background without us realizing, that affects the economy in a way that we don't necessarily see. So now that we've identified, okay, there's this underlying problem, how do we make it so that doesn't exist? And I would just say something as simple as, I know you're about to say something.
I wanted to go back, but that's okay. Yeah. You can keep going this way.
Well, all I'll say is that it could be so simple to just make it so if, like, the developers would basically have to step in here, identify, okay, this could be a problem. We've seen how contentious it is on the forums, and we understand sort of why it is. We could easily just counteract that and put in something in place that gets rid of that from the game. Okay. Right? Whether we understand why it's contentious or not, it is.
Can we just hold off on that topic? Because I know you want to go into what's the solution to this, but before we get there, there's still a few things to hash out about the problem in general. Sure. Before we can come up with a solution. And Talkern's bringing up that point that I think hits the, at least it scratches it. Is that, like, he's saying that if you're making money, you're going to make it regardless, so the economy aspect doesn't change. But if you're thinking about this from a economy perspective, and your goal as the business is try to optimize your payout, right? That's like, if you're playing the economy, then you're always going to be trying to strategize how to maximize your profits, right? And now it comes down to these two choices. Do I improve items for other people, potentially losing rares, or do I just improve my own items, get to keep all my rares, and I still get to sell my stock, right? These are my options. Then somebody who wants to maximize the profit will, in this environment, choose to not take any improving orders, because I could still sell my high quality wares because I'm making them on my own, and I get to keep all the rares that I make, thus making a ton extra money that way. Okay, so now it comes down to, now you have a situation where, and this is what Brian's saying, is that you have a game now where if the optimal strategy is to not take any improving orders, you're going to have less people taking improvement orders in the economy. And it's going to shift the way that the economy in the game works.
Yeah,
sort of.
So like, imagine, this is what I meant by a lose-lose situation. It's not the sour taste that people like Adam feel. That's not the problem. People get sour taste like forever, or bitter taste. The problem is the result of that one that one transaction that took place, right? And the result of that transaction in Adam's case and in many other people's cases is, okay, if this is the case and I'm playing this game as to make money, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to improve people's items anymore. And that's my choice as a seller. And that's what I'm saying is the underlining issue, is the reaction that ends up happening after a transaction like that. It wasn't actually the transaction. We all agree that if you turn an item rare, that's still the guy's item. Done. No question about it. Okay.
Right.
But it's what.
And I know not everybody's going to agree with this because Milkman was here. You're saying that you're a seller and you go into every transaction with the agreement that if you make it rare, you get to keep it, right? And there are sellers out there who do this. But what I'm saying is that as a buyer who's informed about this would not willingly go into that agreement. Like I wouldn't. So you've already lost me as a customer because you have that, you have that policy in place. Okay, so you're going to lose out on customers
things that happen because a scenario like this can exist. That's basically
right.
What the issue is really.
You also might get customers who go into it willingly, but then the moment that it happens to them, like they now lost their item that had their signature on it, let's say, or had their enchantments or whatever it is, and you're replacing it now with another item. And if that person didn't really feel good about that interaction, they're not going to come back to you for another improving job, right? So like as a seller, it's not advantageous to you to include this kind of policy. Okay, it's just going to give you a bad reputation, which you definitely don't want as a seller, for sure.
And so, if I was a developer and looking at this scenario, first choice I would have to make is this a problem enough for me to do something about?
Welcome to the stream.
Or is just this the way that the game is? And if I've come to the conclusion, let's say that, okay, there's not really a benefit to this happening. And how you doing, Opie? Is there a way that I can solve this? And if I put my headspace into that, would it be as simple enough as something like this? You make it so you can remove the chance of me getting a rare, like a toggle. Or having it so like if I created a tool bench or something and I was making the item on the tool bench, the rare chance goes away, but I get a bunch of bonuses because of that. Like I can increase the quality of the item much faster every single imp. Or like something like that. Or I gain more experience if you want to go that route. Like some sort of bonus.
So you as the Emperor can forego your rare rolls at the benefit of some other buff.
Some other bonus.
Kind of thing.
So that negates the whole scenario, potentially, that you're just going to randomly rare roll and there'll be some sort of contentious thing that may or may not occur for another benefit that will not make that scenario happen.
Oh, and I see, Milkman, you're saying that you normally have a stash, so you normally, if somebody asked for something, you would exchange it, and that would be the agreement out ahead. Okay, so that makes sense. Right, but you see how like you have to think through this as a seller to like, this feature affects the way you conduct your business. Is what.
That's the thing.
Yes.
Yeah, the feature affects the way that the economy ends up working.
Right.
Affects what people want to agree to, buyer or seller. It has and it will have a continued effect, even if we don't see it. Because I don't see it. I'm not a buyer or seller.
a lot of people won't see this, and that's because a lot of people don't have that economy-focused sort of play style, and that's okay. Like, it's totally, from the non-economy focused playstyle, this seems like a non-issue. But it really comes down to, for those people who are really economy focused and their playstyle is such that they are always in the trade chat and they're always advertising their stuff. And then if ever you're on the side of I want to buy something from people who are advertising in trade chat, this is also going to affect you. Like, these are the types of things that has caused me to like not want to be part of the economy anymore. Like, I don't really play the economy style anymore. And partially because of these things.
So a bunch of things here. Drogos, you're saying then everyone at an Impelong would do this? Actually, no, because remember, it would be a choice, right? So an Impelong, it might still be beneficial to keep that rare roll going, because that's the fun of the Impelong. You're not doing it for the economy. You're not playing for it. So you would have the choice. You would just do it, and you would have the rare roll, and it would just be fun like that. But as another person, you could gain the other benefit. Depends on it's just an extra option for you, depending on the scenario that you're in.
But I think what Drogos is saying is that what you're going to find is that even if only half the people turn on that feature where they forego their rare roll, you're going to see less rare items made at Impelongs. And I think that he's arguing that we kind of want to see these rare items at Impelongs because it's kind of fun to see that.
I would argue that
unless
what you would see.
maybe the Impelong rules might be everybody must have their rare roll turned on. Like you can sort of have this sort of community.
There'd be no reason to turn it off, right? Because there's two main reasons why people imp stuff at Impelongs. One, they want to get more. They want to get experience. They want to get their skills.
And they want to help out others.
And they want to help out others. That's the only reason you're there at the Impelong.
Yep.
You're not there to make money.
Yep.
And therefore, just if 50% of the reason, or even more, on why you're there is to help others, there wouldn't be a reason to turn it off. Or
Theomox
to be working on a tool bench or doing something that would negate that effect.
Like you're saying, if there was a feature in the game where there's an item that you make that would then trigger that options. Situation where
it wouldn't be like a setting option. I wouldn't want that, to be honest.
So CMX says it's funny. It sounds very similar to economy we live in. Nobody repairs anything anymore, and we all end up having to buy new items, which I think is hilarious.
That's what ends up happening, to be honest, in our economy. Which is really funny. Like, it happens. We don't notice it. I don't notice it. I don't buy and sell items within the economy for me to even notice. Therefore, for me, it makes just more sense that you own the item. If you're gonna improve, if I'm gonna get somebody to improve it, I want that item back. But even though I'm not in it, it has affected me indirectly, because people like Adam will no longer improve my item. There'll be less people, repairing items, like you're saying.
I mean, by the way, I'm trying to get somebody to imp my rope tool, and I can't seem to find anybody really to do that.
You'd have to resort to friends, which is usually what we do anyway here. So that's why we don't see the effect.
So I asked Brian here what his fine carpentry skill is, and it's not quite there yet.
No, I have not worked on it.
Yeah, I'm looking for a pretty high imp, like probably 80 or something like that. Okay, so it sounds like a huge punish to the seller if they don't want to be in the situation where the item becomes rare, then they can't get any or all skill gain, right? So it's like you, as the seller, you're kind of like choosing between playing the economy or skill gain sort of thing. Nin was saying, I think a mechanism where on first creation of a rare, for the first X minutes, you can transfer that rarity to an item blank and restore the item to normal state. The blank is then transferable to the same exact type, so as long as it's unenchanted and unruined.
Like create some sort of item, some sort of blueprint or ruin or something. That you can put the rare on.
So Dalrace, I'll pay you to improve it, but what is your fine carpentry skill? Not Nin's ideas. Okay, so this sounds like a lose-lose for the seller. Right, oh, the one where you're turning off your skill gain, let's say, but you
Skill
also
gain?
don't get rare rolls. Or not skill gain, but you were talking about, let's say,
Okay, so like turning off
bench
the rare
that makes it
roll.
so that there's options, right? Yeah, I turn off my rare roll and I get something else in exchange for that.
Right.
But
Because
then
remember, it's not
there was
just
an
about
issue
rare
with
roll we're talking about, right? Like, as a person that plays in your playstyle, what is the most valuable commodity that you have?
You mean as the economy playstyle?
Yeah.
Well, that definitely
What is
the
it?
most valuable would be the fact that you can make rares. That's
Okay, I would argue that's not your most valuable commodity.
Okay.
That your most valuable commodity is time.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's
Okay,
time.
yeah, totally.
Right? Because
time.
how
Yep.
long does it take me to create this item up? How long does it?
Yep.
And if you can reduce that by a substantial amount, so if you're saying, oh, well, okay, normally it would take me 10 minutes to spend the time on improving this guy's item to 80.
But yeah, if I could do
And
that
then
in
you go
7
on
minutes.
a tool, but you could do that in 5 minutes, let's say.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to take that to remove the rare roll in that 5 minutes?
Right. I totally feel like that would help. Like if you would just remove the possibility of a rare roll, and that increases your imping action time, or like increases the time that it, or makes it faster.
Yeah.
Totally, that would
In
fix
turn,
the issue, I think.
Let's say that tool bench could give you a 50% chance more of a rare roll if you wanted, by reducing some other factor, like
Right. Like how much
Like
is
it-
improving it by.
yeah, how much improve it by. Like this is not just the one. This is like some item that allows you to customize the way that you're improving an item in general, not
Okay.
just for this one scenario, really.
Right. That's interesting. And I saw Joe came in. How's it going, Joe? And Lion X, you're here too. What's going on?
Yes, I really want these benches to be put in. I've talked about it for 8 years. No.
I know. These benches.
Tool bench, workbench of some kind.